So I've been thinking a lot about Liberation Day and Trump's tariffs and listening to a lot of what a lot of people have to say about this stuff. And I have to say there's some good commentary out there, I guess, but not in the mainstream media, I suppose. And it just seems like there's more to it than what they're saying, right? I'm just not a fan of I feel like I'm being bullshitted, basically, right? So Andrew Wilson from The Crucible tells us that, well, he's going to tell us what these tariffs really mean. So I think this should be instructive, if nothing else. And just for the record, I don't know anything about economics. I could barely do math, so, you know, let's see what Andrew has to say. And, I came here because Andrew is, at least when I used to watch his debates, he's someone who's really against simping. So he'll tell us the good, the bad, the ugly, and the beautiful when it comes to Trump's tariffs, right? He's not going to sugarcoat anything, and he definitely won't just suck his dick, right?
And you are now, but you don't too often, for many years and decades even, you didn't hear too much about our country, and its taxpayers have been ripped off for more than 50 years, but it is not going to happen anymore.
Well, that's just pure, unadulterated bullshit. People need to be calling this out, right? If you're interested in truth. If you know anything about anything, where do I even begin? Let's let Andrew tell us how that's bullshit.
It's not going to happen.
Okay, I'm not going to tell you why that's bullshit, and a lot of you, I'm sure, already know. But we had, up until very recently, the biggest economy in the world, with in where people had the highest standard of living, at least insofar when it came to sizable populations. Let's not talk about Monaco or Liechtenstein and shit, right? Come on, right? These royal enclaves, but yeah, okay. China has surpassed the United States insofar as GDP and GDP. Is that what it's called? So it is what it is, but that's why we're getting this new world order. That's what this is, right? Reshuffling of the global order, Trump at the head of it, because the old world order is no longer working for the United States. And the reason why it was that order held for so long is because it was very profitable and very beneficial to the United States. Which is why United States was, at least when it came to sizable populations, the richest country in the world with the most powerful military and the country that ruled the world. So to say the United States was ripped off by the global order it created is just fucking retarded. Yeah? Sorry to be pausing so much. I don't even have to get into the details and explain to you exactly the mechanisms by which United States wasn't ripped off but was profiting and benefiting from the old world order. But just look at the big picture, right? That doesn't fucking make sense. U.S. would rule the world, and yet, with its benevolence, I guess, just allowed everybody to rip them off, right? So benevolent. Fuck out of here.
In a few moments, I will sign a historic executive order instituting reciprocal tariffs on countries throughout the world. Reciprocal. That means they do it to us.
So, this is just one of many reasons why I think Trump is a puppet. He clearly just recently learned what the word means, and he's just flexing, right?
Said we do it to them.
By the way, I got a hold of the flow chart, at least the one that was given out by the Trump administration. which showed how big the disparity in tariffs are versus the counter tariffs. China was something like 60 plus percent, and
I've never heard Andrew ever before Trump started talking about this, or anyone really for that matter, talking about tariffs needing to be reciprocal somehow, or that it was a problem that they weren't, right? This sort of thing was released, and well, people have picked up the chant. Are these free thinkers?
And the United States is slapping a 32% tariff back. It's not even equal with the amount that they tariff us. Big fan of you and your debates. Any tips for smoke?
So how are we just going to assume, take it at face value, that reciprocal tariffs should be so, when that's a completely, no, okay, maybe that's not fair, but it's a pretty new concept, right? Countries have tariffs on other countries, and those other countries don't always retaliate or reciprocate, right? This is a new thing. It's a new world order, and there's more to it than just that. And this sort of reciprocity that Trump is asking for, why isn't anyone questioning it? Why is that why is that a standard all of a sudden? Like, can somebody explain to me why it has to be thus? This just sounds so lowbrow. You do it to us, we do it to you. Okay, cool. If reciprocity is key, why not just be like, hey, China, how about you do zero tariffs and we won't tariff your shit coming into the United States? Let's just go take everything down to zero. Everybody, let's just go way down to zero and have free trade. Right? If it's about reciprocity, well, it's not about that, right? It's not about free trade. And I'm not trying to be too reductionist and say that would. There's a lot more to free trade than just that, right? It's the United States keeping shipping lanes open and sinking pirate ships and things of that nature, right? Well, U.S. is no longer willing to do that, right? The old world order is gone by the wayside. It's not convenient for the United States. They can't afford to uphold it. So that's why we're moving in this direction. And this like reciprocal tariff shit. How did we all of a sudden just take it at face value that that's the correct way to go? Why? I'm not saying it isn't, but like everyone just is so lowbrow and kindergarten type. I'm just saying, right? Well, let's just go to zero. Why not? Well, then you can tax your people and line your pockets. You can raise revenue, right? If you went down to zero. No more free trade, suckers. Life's about to get rough. The governments all over the world need money. Yo, money. All right? Don't be calling this guy a conservative. This motherfucking guy just instituted probably the biggest tax in the history of the United States. That's not a conservative thing. That's a progressive thing. Well, those are his roots, right?
Are you smoking yet? That's my tip, bro.
Very simple. Can't get any simpler than that. This is one of the most important.
Nope, they put a tariff on it too. Didn't have a very high tariff against us to begin with. It looked in the chart like it was 19%. Neil McCoy, Andrew, not brave enough to speak out. And you can turn your camera on, and you could, which was actually proportionally higher than it was with a lot of nations.
Days, in my opinion, in American history, it's our declaration of economic independence. For years, hardworking American citizens were forced to sit on the sidelines as other nations got rich and powerful. Much of it at
I mean, like, really? We're just going to let them get away with that? Really?
our expense. But now it's our turn to prosper.
I mean, okay, maybe in the last decade or so, like, that has become somewhat true. Fair enough. But to say that it's been like that for half a century, really? We're just going to let them do that? It's just absolute fucking drivel.
And in so doing use trillions and trillions of dollars to reduce our taxes and pay down our national debt, and it'll all happen very quickly.
So this is, again, I'm not an economist. 2 plus 2 is 4, though. I know that much. But I just have a feeling, and they've been banding this about, they're going to devalue the dollar. And if the dollar gets devalued, right, doesn't that mean that the U.S. debt is, well, easier to pay down, right? It's not what it was. And the dollar being very, very, very strong is what allowed the United States to get rid of their manufacturing. And why would American people want to slave in these fucking factories when the US dollar was so strong they could just buy whatever slave labor made in China or anywhere else? Right? They didn't have to get their hands dirty because the currency was propped up by US fleet. Oh, but I guess I said I wasn't supposed to explain the mechanisms, but well, that's one of them, right? So that's the reason why U.S. manufacturing sector was gutted, because you didn't have to, you know, sweat and work so hard and invest so much money into your manufacturing and do any of that, because the dollar was artificially inflated and it was so strong that you could just buy everything on the cheap. Times are changing. It's about to get rough. Austerity measures. Anybody remember that? It's coming. So,
with today's action, we are finally going to.
Yeah, at least the table that they sent out. Let me see. I think I took a screenshot of it. From us. And then the Philippines, 34% to 17%. So it seems like it's proportional, at least there. So 34%.
Why should it be proportional? And if it is to be proportional, let's just go down to 0.
I don't even know I don't know how you can complain about that. They're proportional to all the nations, including.
Be able to make.
So he just assumes this standard, this axiom, like proportional, fair. The fuck? Since when is politics fair? Or ought to be? And why should it be? What's the not bleeping out, but erasing, muting out? What is it? Jew? Israel? The shekels might dry up.
Make America great again, greater than ever before.
Right, we're gonna send all these Americans to the factories. We're gonna devalue the dollar, meaning, well, you won't be able to buy as much shit, and you're gonna have to work harder. But I mean, hey, that's probably fair, right? Whatever the fuck that means. But let's just call it what it is, right? It's about to get rough. It's already rough. Look, no offense to Americans, but like, and some people truly are struggling in America. Don't get me wrong, but like, the types of the level of consumerism that you have been afforded by the U.S. Navy. Let's just keep it real. Yeah, that's probably doesn't feel good to have to give that up, but go see what, and a lot of you know this. Go see how people in other countries live, and the types of things they can afford, and how much they have to sweat. Right? There's no. They don't have this. A lot of places in the world, they don't have this culture where they have to go to the gym to fucking sweat. You know what I mean? It's a joke.
Jobs and factories will come roaring back into our country, and you see it happening already.
And they clap, right? Jobs and factories. You going to the gulag, sir? Andrew's not. He wants you there.
We will supercharge our domestic industrial base. We will pry open foreign markets and break down foreign trade barriers, and ultimately more production at home.
Pry open foreign markets. Trump's going to use these, like this, what he says these tariffs are for, like the narrative for public consumption that I have no doubt in my mind Andrew's just going to repeat back to you. That doesn't make sense when you look at how he's applying these tariffs. And I talked about that in another video on tariffs. Like, there's no, for example, right? There's no fucking banana really industry in the United States. So if you want to, if it's about protectionism, why the fuck are you taxing Americans on Ecuadorian bananas, for example, right? Uh, why are you putting higher tariffs on countries that don't have a that actually have a trade deficit with the United States, right? Why are you tariffing them? So it's not about reciprocity. It ain't. That's not what this is about. This is about renegotiating the world order and renegotiating these deals. And it's about bilateral deals between the United States and other countries. So it's going to be US dealing with Canada individually, and it's going to have a different deal with another country, and it's going to use not just tariffs but military, the threat of military force, and if push comes to shove, military force, in order to get what the people behind Trump, what the deep state want. Okay? Things are changing. The world is going to be a completely different place. This is going to lead to a lot more conflict, a lot of it kinetic. And he needs money for the military.
Home will mean stronger competition and lower prices for consumers. This will be indeed the golden age of America. It's coming back. We're going to come back very strongly. We're pleased to be joined on this momentous.
Increasing taxes is going to lead to lower prices. No challenge from Andrew, or no explanation why it is so.
Occasion by Vice President J.D. Vance. J.D., thank you.
See, unlike many people, I don't see the doom and gloom from the idea of these tariffs.
All right, cool. Here comes the argument.
Tariffs have always traditionally been the way that we raise money for our nation. That's one. And if it's a good segue into us low.
Okay. Tariffs is not how you raise money for the nation. It's how you raise money. Nation are the people, right? That's how you raise money for the state, the government.
Lowering the income tax, considering we can't pay for the nation now, it seems like a wise idea to do something about how lopsided these deficits are. And they are very lopsided. So these reciprocal tariffs seem completely fair. The fact of the matter is, though, is they're like, well, wait a second, it's going to raise consumer goods. It's like, yeah, but we're getting ripped off. Like, you understand that you're still paying way more for the good on because the United States is getting ripped off, sending goods elsewhere. They tax them at 90%. It's nuts.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. What are you, J.D.? No, that's.
How is the U.S. getting ripped off? How? Isn't it the people in that country that are getting ripped off? Look, it really would depend on what the tariff is, what it's on, and you'd have to study. And you can't just like do this broad brushstrokes and call all tariffs the same thing. They're not.
That wasn't.
At the Crucible, not everything is 90%, most are around 15% in regard to Vietnam. I'm just reading you what the Trump reciprocal tariff chart was that they released by country. So I obviously don't think that every single tariff on every single good is as high as 90%. So I don't know how they came up with the numbers. If it's some kind of average, like I'm not sure exactly how they came up with it. I haven't had time to look into it yet.
Too hard to find. I was looking, he likes to take a low-key attitude. So usually if you sit right in front, he's gaining a lot of confidence, Mike. And nearly my entire cabinet.
First thing we've ever done for our economy.
What?
Tariffs are disastrous for the economy? I don't think so. Not if you win the trade wars with the tariffs. Then it'll be the least disastrous thing we've ever done for our economy. It'll be the least. Imagine American businesses being able to export goods without these tariffs from these other nations, right? It's going to make us more money. It's going to assist our tax base here. It's going to incentivize.
Wait, how are U.S. producers going to be able to export their goods to other countries when so far the response is from these countries is to raise tariffs on U.S. goods? Aren't high tariffs the problem? Well, in response, all these countries are raising their tariffs on U.S. goods too. Now, that's going to get renegotiated, and there's going to be instances where U.S. will say, for example, to Japan, look, we got military bases there. We're helping to protect you from China. We're investing so much money. How about debt forgiveness and no tariffs on any of our goods? And we don't pull out our military from the Pacific or from Okinawa or whatever, right? There's a lot more to it than that, right? But sorry, Andrew's supposed to tell us.
Companies to come back. It's not a disaster for the economy. There may be effects in the economy which are negative in the short term. I don't give a right. I'm convinced that people cannot seem to understand that there's always going to be turbulent times in a nation where there's going to have to be self-sacrifice for correction.
So Andrew, who probably makes what, a couple of million a year or something doing YouTube and shit. I don't know. I'm just saying a lot more than the average person, right? Well, why would he give a fuck? Why would he? He's not in the shoes of the average American, right?
In one of those times where there's going to be self-sacrifice for correction. But we do this every day in our normal lives, right? We put money away when we'd rather spend it, for instance, on frivolous like guns. We put money away so that down the road we can apply it. We take the pain now so that down the road we can get the fruits and the yields.
But yeah, he's talking about consumerism, and it's out of fucking hand. It's not that big a deal, right? But for some people, it will be.
From us kind of, taking the small amount of pain now so that we can get the massive reward later. For some reason, though, here inside the United States, this idea is completely foreign to people. They're like, if there's
because nobody is explaining how this is actually going to happen.
Any way, shape, or form, any sort of self-sacrifice that I have to do in order to make huge gains on behalf of the nation, I'm not going to do it. And I think that's a really stupid mindset to have, ultimately.
Speaker Mike Johnson.
So once again, it's just assumed without any evidence or argument that a little bit of sacrifice now is going to translate into great gains at a later date. How?
Has done an amazing job. And with the great success we had last night, many of the members of the House and Senate are with us. Senators, congressmen, thank you all for being with us.
The problem.
I haven't watched this before, so when it just seems like nothing's happening, I'm just skipping.
The problem is they're not cutting spending. Well, I mean, they're making an attempt at it, right? They're at least trying to make the attempt with auditing through Doge and these other things. But I mean, how do you cut spending when you have Social Security? Like what are you going to cut? Entitlements are just a complete wallet drain. There's so little left over after entitlements to begin with. It's like, I don't know exactly what.
Get ready for austerity. Andrew doesn't give a fuck.
You would do to begin the spending controls. You can obviously go after the military, right? But I don't know.
That's not going to happen, is it, Andrew? Because we're not really isolationists, are we? Right? All this talk of stopping foreign wars, That was all bullshit, right?
Well, I think that cutbacks in the military ultimately will be very bad for the U.S. dollar, it being the reserve currency because of our Navy, right? So,
Oh, that's going away. You can see that has to go away. That's the old world order. We're entering something new. That's going to go away. You can't. You can't have the US dollar as the reserve currency while at the same time bringing manufacturing back to the United States. But if you can, tell us how.
there's some give and takes here. Brian says the Constitution gives the power of taxation solely to Congress. The executive imposing taxes, a blatant usurpation of this power, an act of treason. Treason is a high crime. The House must impeach, the Senate convict. Well, first of all, you're
No simping, okay?
stupid, Brian S. You're stupid. Let's go over this so that you understand a couple things. If it were the case that we were following the Constitution when it came to assessing taxes, you would never have an income tax because that would have been considered unconstitutional. That's why they had to pass it via an amendment, right? Having something which was a non-proportion tax was, it's absurd. You know what I mean? No way to avoid it. Proportional to income. That would have made our founders roll over in their grave, right? The other thing is that I think that the president can actually legally impose tariffs. I think he has the power to do so. I think that Congress can levy taxes on the citizens of the United States, but I think he is within his power to do this. Now, could get challenged in the court, and I could end up being wrong. But, at this point, they play so fast and loose with the Constitution anyway. It's like, who gives it at this point? Almost like, who follows it now anyway?
Wait. This is a conservative channel, right? Trump's a conservative, right? Right? These are trads. Yeah? You sure about that? You sure about that? They're trying to tell you these guys are leftists.
Appreciate it. For decades, the United States slashed our trade barriers on other countries while those nations placed massive tariffs on our products and created outrageous non-monetary barriers to decimate our industries. And in many cases, the non-monetary barriers were worse than the monetary ones.
Huh. They decimated your industries. Is that what they did? United States chose this course. But it's run its course. This is just bullshit narrative for the dupes, man.
They manipulated their currencies, subsidized their exports, stole our intellectual property, imposed exorbitant VAT taxes to disadvantage our products, adopted unfair rules and technical standards, and
Okay. So I just pulled it up just to make sure. Congress has long enacted laws authorizing the president to adjust tariff rates on goods in certain circumstances. So it does appear that
To adjust tariff rates on tariffs that the Congress instituted?
that he can indeed adjust these tariffs. So just pointing that out.
That's not what he's doing, though.
created filthy pollution havens. They were absolutely filthy, but they always came to us and they said, we're violating, we should pay for it. It's all detailed in a very big report by the U.S. Trade Representative on Foreign Trade.
I guess a lot.
So, yeah, that was another benefit of the U.S.-based or U.S.-led world order, right? They exported the pollution many other places. But don't you worry, it's coming back with the industry and the firing of so many parks and recreation workers, helping to kill tourism, at least foreign tourists, which is a big percentage of tourism in the United States, defunding national parks, things of that nature. You're going to see mining, exploitation of these natural resources in some of these pristine environments. You're going to see some factories too, mining and all that. You're going to see a lot more pollution, right? It's like they're trying to paint this turd like it's US had it good for a very, very long time. It was able to send all that shit elsewhere and benefit just from the products and not have to deal with the pollution. But, it's coming back home. You gonna work at a factory, Andrew?
Lawmakers shouldn't have authorized that, huh?
Trade barriers, and I'll just hold it up for you. It's available, and you don't have to pay too much. As I understand it, you'll pay nothing. It's a lot of work for something, actually, because it's a special book. It's frankly, it's very upsetting when you read it, when you see what people have been doing to us for 30 years. This all happened with no response from the United States of America, none whatsoever. But those days are over. Let me offer just a few examples of the vicious attacks our workers have faced for so many years. The United States charges other countries only.
Are they ignoring or just don't understand the fact that tariffs are a form of economic warfare and the country is at threat at all times without tariffs? No. You have to understand that there's entire global establishments and NGOs which are completely funded by bribing Congress, by telling certain members of Congress, hey, we're going to fund your reelection campaign through super PACs and things like this, basically dark money. And oftentimes these places have foreign bodies which, they benefit from all of the free trade, whereas we get screwed over by that free trade. So, for instance, let's say that you're a company in Vietnam, right? And let's say that the tariff, this is hypothetical, right? I don't know what the exact rate is, but just hypothetically speaking, let's say that the rate for the goods which are coming in that you're importing from the United States, they have like a 2% tax versus the ones that you're exporting, right? Now those have like a 30% tax or something, right? The cost of doing business in Vietnam would not be very good. But what if you reverse that? So this is the same idea, right? The idea here is, hey, we're going to utilize these tariffs in order to balance the playing field so that we don't have these deficits where companies can move to these foreign areas and then take advantage of their tax system and the stupid tax system of the United States, which we allow ourselves to get ripped off by letting them tax our goods while we don't tax theirs at all. Stupid. That's actually stupid, by the way.
A 2.4 tariff on motorcycles. Meanwhile, Thailand and others are charging much higher prices, like 60%.
What do NGOs have to do with tariffs? Well, I'll tell you if you want me to. So there's tons of non-governmental organizations and think tanks which are actually funded by private industries, oftentimes from foreign money in private industry. And they definitely have a huge incentive to keep the tax rates coming on imported goods where those companies are extremely low so that they can maximize profits. And so if you want ideas of like NGOs that have done this for years, all you got to do is think about Big Tobacco. I mean, Big Tobacco was, and Philip Morris, they had NGO think tanks all over the place, and they were running a multi-nation operation essentially. So you have that kind of power, and you can get your money in American politics. You can actually direct NGOs to come out with studies and all sorts of things, economic studies even, showing that there will be doom and gloom if you actually protect yourself from these various things. And they seem to work to various degrees. So if you think that NGOs have nothing to do with any of this, you're quite wrong. The non-governmental organizations, I would argue, have more power these days over government than the government has over itself.
India charges 70%, Vietnam charges 75%, and others are even higher than that. Likewise, until today, the United States has for decades charged a 2.5 tariff. Think of that, 2.5% on foreign-made automobiles. The European Union charges us more than 10% tariffs, and they have 20% VATs, much, much higher. India charges 70%, and perhaps Worst of all are the non-monetary restrictions imposed by South Korea, Japan, and very many other nations as a result of these colossal trade barriers. 81% of the cars in South Korea are made in South Korea. 94% of the cars in Japan are made in Japan. Toyota sells 1 million foreign-made automobiles into the United States, and General Motors sells almost none. Ford sells very little.
But that just reflects the power dynamic. And again, it's changing, right? United States can afford, used to be able to, afford to buy all these cars because of the strength of the dollar. That's changing.
None of our companies are allowed to go into other countries. And I say that friend and foe. And
it's actually kind of wild when you think about it, too. Like, just take a bird's eye view for a second. If we were in a physical conflict or a physical war with other nations, and the kind of top-down messaging to the public was, look, this is a serious war, and we're going to need, through the kind of patriotic propaganda and things like this, for there to be some self-sacrifice. You know, maybe there's going to be a bit less at the grocery store, right? Maybe there's going to be a bit more you pay in taxes as this conflict goes, right? But for the purposes of the conflict, there's going to be a bit of self-sacrifice, like every war we've ever had. But when it comes to economic warfare, so all of a sudden, like this idea that there might be some temporary pain so that we can get some great long-term results just goes right out the window. Just goes right out the window.
In many cases, the friend is worse than the foe in terms of trade. But
so if kinetic military warfare and economic warfare, if those things are, and I don't know if Andrew even realizes what he's saying, or how this could be spun. These, because right now both of these are going hand in hand, as I talked about at the beginning of the video. But if we are to treat these as part of the same toolkit to influence nations, right? And there's certain rules like reciprocity and what's fair and what isn't fair, then, well, Japan, the Philippines, I don't know, you tell me, Ecuador, Italy, and 100 other countries, do they get to put a military base in the United States? I mean, what's fair is fair, right? Do they?
such horrendous imbalances have devastated our industrial base and put our national security at risk. I don't blame these other countries at all for this calamity. I blame former presidents and past leaders who weren't doing their job. They let it happen, and they let it happen to an extent that nobody can even believe.
Okay, so you get these half-truths from Trump. Like, yes, this was what United States wanted, right? But why are we blaming these guys? This guy's ego's just, so boring.
That's why, effective at midnight, we will impose a 25% tariff on all foreign-made automobiles.
So, Toyotas, whatever else have you. I mean, cars gonna go from 40 grand to 50 grand overnight. Damn. Like, who's clapping, right? Rich people. The oligarchy.
Thank you. Brian, I'd like to have you come up here for a second, okay? I just see him sitting.
Because they're getting kickbacks and shit.
Companies are outselling the same product because it's cheaper to the consumer. JP gets richer, which they subsidize their company with. Makes sense. Totally makes sense.
Understands this business a lot better than the economists, a lot better than anybody. Brian, say a few words, please, would you? Thank you. It's a great honor to have you. Thanks. Thank you, Mr. President.
So they brought in this token blue collar dude to, well, I don't know, polish this fucking turd.
I grew up just north of Detroit, Michigan, in Macomb County, known as the home of the Reagan Democrats. My first vote for president was for...
And Macomb County now is, by the way, just pointing that out, Macomb County, Michigan, terrible.
Ronald Reagan. I thought that was going to be the best president I ever saw in my lifetime until Donald J. Trump came along. Metro Detroit area closed. There are now plants sitting idle. There are now plants that are underutilized. And Donald Trump's policies are going to bring product back into those underutilized plants. There's going to be new investment. There's going to...
The tariffs ain't going to do none of that. Okay? This is the secondary stage where they're going to negotiate these things. And they've actually been doing that with Japan, right? Toyota, was it Hyundai, whatever, both pledged to invest so much in the United States, right? They know what time it is. They know what this is about. These tariffs are, in large part, negotiating tactics. Yes, it's a way for government to raise revenue. Insofar as protectionism goes, I guess there's some industry that ought to be protected, whatever's left of the critical stuff. But tariffs in and of themselves aren't just going to bring manufacturing back. How? Can someone explain to me how this is going to happen? Right? You gotta force the hand of a lot of these companies. You have to threaten them. You have to make deals. It's a lot more than just these reciprocal tariffs that has to happen in order for this investment to come to the United States.
Going to be new plants built, and the UAW members, and I brought 20 of them with me. They're sitting right over here.
There's actually, I was about to make fun of this guy for wearing the stupid yellow vest. You know, I hate the yellow vest. You know, I just hate the yellow vest. Yeah, it's every factory on planet Earth. If you walk outside for 5 seconds, you want to stand out at a podium with something really brightly colored.
Is Andrew going to work at a factory?
That you can see from really far away. Just pointing that out. You know, like, you know, some of these speeches, there have been things which have happened in the past, unfortunately, right? So I'm not sure that the yellow vest was the safest option, ultimately.
Support Donald Trump's policies on tariffs 100%. So, Mr. President, we can't thank you enough. And in 6 months or a year, we're going to begin to see the benefits. I can't wait to see what's happening 3 or 4 years down the road. Thank you, Mr. President.
Simp.
What a great guy. He got it right from the beginning. He got it before almost anybody else. This group over there, they got it too. And, you know, we won the state of Michigan. We won almost all of them. But we won Michigan by a lot, and I want to just thank you. You're going to be very happy very soon. And
this guy says in the chat, he's like, bro, work for Mossad. Well, let me give you a couple of arguments for why I wouldn't. One, I'm very expensive. And two, I'm told that particular group might be known for being cheap. Just saying. Not that you can't buy me. I just think you couldn't afford me. I just think you couldn't afford me.
you probably see what's happening with all.
Somebody did.
Not only car companies, but car companies.
Man, this guy just rubs it in your face. And you see us clap.
In particular, see it with all of the ones they're moving, they're announcing day in, day out. You're seeing it. Nobody's ever seen anything like that. With today's actions, we're also standing up for our great farmers and ranchers who are brutalized by nations all over the world. It's brutalized. Canada, by the way, imposes a 250 to 300% tariff on many of our dairy products. They do the first...
Canada. Would you say economic warfare helped bring down the USSR and can help bring down China over time if wanted? Tariffs level the field, but can be used as a form of warfare, correct? Just clarifying. Both are true, yeah. Both are true at the same time. The idea that Trump seems to have right now is just trying to balance out the deficits between these nations. just the idea, like, if you're really actually going to, if we're going to be playing fair here, right, then you.
Then why is he tariffing countries that have a deficit with the United States? Take Poland, for example, right? Poland buys a lot more US crap than the other way around. So if this is about fair, right? Shouldn't US have like a negative tariff, or shouldn't they be sending money to Poland or something? So this is another way a tariff could become a tool. It could become a tool to split the European Union, for example, right? Because the EU is this one bucket that Trump tariffed. It doesn't matter what any of the individual countries, what type of trade deficit US has with them. The simple fact that Germany, who's like the third largest economy in the world, US has a big deficit with them. Everybody else in Europe gets to suffer a high tariff because it's EU is this one bucket, right? Could that be perhaps a tool that Trump is going to try to use to split up the EU, right? Because it could say to a country like Poland, for example, hey, if you leave the EU, no more tariffs, right? Because we don't have a trade deficit with you. And, maybe we'll build a brand new shiny military base in your country. And then when Russia's ready to invade, we'll just, the day before, we'll get GTFO, right? Like we did in Afghanistan. Maybe. I'm just saying, right? So these tariffs, there's a lot more to it than they charge us 32%, so we gonna charge them 32%. Come on, man. Come on.
If you're going to impose all these taxes on our goods, we're going to impose your taxes back. Now, what about the potential that he wins? Like, let's say, for instance, that these countries do end up dropping their tariffs because they lose these trade wars. Isn't then the leftist argument going to collapse? Wouldn't they have to then say,
you are the leftist?
Then that necessarily means that all product prices are going to go down, right? So all he has to do is...
You're like anti-free market, you're pro-taxation, you're like... you're a leftist, you're progressive, you're not a conservative. Anyway, what's the real reason for these tariffs? Are we going to get to it finally?
Is win some of these trade wars where they lower the tariff, and then necessarily the product prices go down, and the businesses necessarily make more money, right? Isn't that the case? So their own argument, which is, tariffs are going to make prices go up.
Okay, so I hold my hands up and I tell you, like, I don't understand the economy very well. I'll keep telling you this. It's just not my thing. But I could tell you, Andrew here doesn't have a fucking clue either.
It's like, okay, well, then that means that if other countries drop their tariffs, it's going to make goods and consumption for those people much lower, and our businesses can maximize profits. And also, for our use, our tariffs go back down, and then our goods go down as well. So it's like it's a double win, right? Isn't that the entire point? Right? So the leftists are going to actually have to be beholden to their own argument here.
The first can of milk.
But if that's the goal and that's the case, then why are countries that have a trade deficit with the United States, why are they getting tariffed? Countries that have lower tariffs on the United States, right? Why are they getting tariffed?
They do the first little carton of milk at a very low price, but after that it gets bad, and then it gets up to 275, 300%. So when they're figuring what's Canada charging, they say, about 2%, 3%. But take a look at what happens down the road. When you look a little bit, it's not a pretty picture, and we don't like it, and it's not fair. It's not fair to our farmers. It's not fair to our country. And with countries like Canada, we subsidize a lot of countries and keep them going and keep them in business. In the case of Mexico, it's 300 billion a year. In the case of Canada, it's close to $200 billion a year. And I say, what?
Yeah, but you get to dictate the foreign policy to them. That's what you're paying for, or used to be. But all of that is getting renegotiated.
Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? I mean, at what point do we say you got to work for yourselves and you got to? This is why we have the big deficit.
What I think about in Texas, charting.
The United States can no longer afford to write the foreign policy of many of these countries. It could no longer afford to be the global policeman, and it needs to renegotiate and redefine where it needs to focus. It just can't be everywhere at the same time, all the damn time, everywhere. So these deals need to get renegotiated, and U.S. military forces need to get moved around, and it's no longer gonna be free, so to speak. If you are to have U.S. involved in your economy, in your politics, in your security, if you are to have the United States involved, it's going to cost you more than it did before, because the U.S. can't afford to just provide you security for you, because the dollar's going away as the reserve currency. BRICS are looking to, they are trading in their own currencies more and more. The power of the dollar is going away. The U.S. can no longer just buy everybody everywhere and all their shit all the time, because there's other superpowers who are gaining relative to the United States. They're gaining more and more power. So U.S. has to be a lot more economical with how it projects its power, how it dictates to other countries, and it's going to need money. That's exactly what's happening in the EU, right? U.S. is no longer going to be investing as much, perhaps in a few years, not at all, no money in Europe's security, and it's telling Europe, you gotta fund your own, and that's fair enough, right? You gotta find your own militaries, you gotta spend on your defense. We just can't do it anymore, and Europe is saying, all right, well then you don't get to tell us what to do. And if we want to take that $300 billion of Russian money and give it to Ukraine, we're just gonna do it, right? These things, well, we'll see. There's a lot of stuff blocking that, right? I mean, if can anybody guess why Germany might not be cool with war reparations and shit? You know what I mean?
Community in Texas. Look, here in the United States, at least as long as that old pesky Second Amendment is around, I've never considered here to be much of a threat. To be perfectly honest with you.
But aren't they walking all over the Constitution? And that seemed to make you happy before?
The only reason there's such a threat in the UK is because the right to self-defense in the UK just doesn't exist. I mean, you can't have a damn pocket knife there. If you have a baseball bat in your car, you go to prison. You know what I mean? But here,
that's going to change probably. That's probably going to change.
The art of self-defense is alive and well still. And I don't, they seem to behave here a lot more, don't they? Everybody in they make the communities, right? Well, they kind of stay in those communities, don't they? They kind of stay in those communities a little bit, don't they? Because, moving external and causing problems doesn't have the same...
Andrew doesn't get out much of his own little bubble, does he?
Well, let's say repercussion that it has here.
And don't stop the niggas.
Never will you see this play out better than when the BLM riots were going on. And I remember you went to the wrong house one day, and a fat man with glasses who looked like Peter Griffin came out with his hag of a wife. But she was armed with a small revolver and him with an AR. And that crowd very quickly straightened their shit out. Very quickly. They just kind of passed right along, didn't they? And then, of course, there was also a gentleman named Kyle. He put the boom.
Tariffs.
That was a big mistake. That was a big major metropolitan areas that were under Democrat control had to suffer through that, because in the smaller rural areas.
But we're not going to take anything that you have. Australia bans, and they're wonderful people and wonderful everything, but they ban American beef, yet we imported $3 billion of Australian beef from them just last year alone. They won't take any of our beef. They don't want it because they don't want.
Maybe because you put too much garbage in the cow, right? I don't know. I mean, Trump just says these things and people are just like, yeah, they charge us, we charge them. Well, maybe the quality's not the same. You know what I mean? Maybe your beef comes with a little bit of poison or whatever. Maybe it's just not up to snuff. I don't know. It's just not. I get it. This is like for public consumption. You know, you gotta make this shit simple, so the average person just goes along with it, I guess, and feels like they understand what's going on. You can't just. And I'm not even saying I understand what the fuck's going on exactly. This shit is so complicated. Trump's a puppet, man. He doesn't understand how this shit works either. He gets his lines, he learns new words, and you know, I guess he's a good actor. You know what I mean? And I just don't think like this is what I mean. Like the conversation, a lot of the conversation about tariffs on social media, on mainstream media, at least in the Anglosphere, is just severely lacking. Like, there's like no. And look, I'm not going to finish watching this because it would take forever, but I gave it half an hour and there's zero explanation, not even a hint at what these new tariffs really mean, right? On the one hand, they're new tariffs. On the other hand, when it's convenient, he's adjusting tariffs that are already in place. It's like, this isn't even coherent. And I don't think Andrew understands the economy. And, you know, people pay a lot of money for this just bullshit. Just absolute, just blah, 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 blah. Did anybody learn anything listening to this? Or was it just like a powwow to dunk on the leftists and feel good because we're doing the right thing? We don't know why, but, you know, we're willing to suffer now in order to benefit later. You don't have to explain to me what the mechanisms are going to be, how this is going to work exactly, why what you say will happen will happen. There's just, this isn't new media. This isn't like alternative media. This is just the same old, man. It's just less polished and I guess superficially different. Let's give him a chance. Maybe he'll tell us what these tariffs really mean.
Don't want it to affect their farm.
To import it, I completely understand why you would want to put your countries first. I get that. But we're just going to do the same thing, that's all. Imposing tariffs across the board over food sovereignty protectionism is not fair. Would you allow China to take over your food production market? Thing is that we do a huge amount of importing of meat from China. The U.S. is a massive exporter, but mostly of produce. California being one of the major places where it's grown. California, I think, provides the majority of produce for the entirety of the United States, that one state. So we're a mass exporter of food. I mean, we export a ton of it.
So everyone's going to be a little bit more vegan with Trump's tariffs, right? Is that where this is headed?
But we also import quite a bit. We also import quite a bit of food. What Trump is saying is he's like, we don't really need to do that. We don't, if these people aren't going to accept the imports of our meat, why the should we accept the import of their meat? Our farmers here can reap the benefits of the American citizens buying their products locally from those farmers, which, by the way, has been a thing that people have been talking about doing for years and years. The whole buy local move was something which has been predicted for a long time, and that's part of populism, is to buy domestic for the purpose of patriotism and for your fellow countrymen, rather than buying cheap from China and emboldening your enemies. That's a really terrible idea ultimately.
Right now, starting about midnight tonight, I would say. And China charges American rice farmers and...
What's going on with your nose, Andrew? The fucking thing's been twitching for half an hour.
Over quota, it's called. A tariff rate of 65%. South Korea charges 50. Actually, they charge different from 50.
The Siggy's balanced the shit out, I guess. Wasn't he just criticizing Philip Morris and shit? Ooh. Yeah, he's not going to tell you what the tariffs are really about because he has no clue. He doesn't know. He's just, simping and just parroting what Trump is saying, right? And Trump was told what to say, and he's just parroting what people that are much smarter about economy told him to say. And they can't tell him how this is going, how they believe the theory behind these tariffs, right? Because, well, he wouldn't fucking understand it either. So, I don't know, man. There's like zero critical thought here. There's no, everything Trump is doing is just great. There's like zero criticism. It's just, this is, yeah.